Essentials of Well-Being, our session 6, continuing in the way of well-being. So we've come to this point of 6 sessions, and I'm looking forward to sharing this session to see what it takes. My own meditations and sharing your own meditations too, seeing what it takes to continue in the way of well-being. So we talked about the essentials of well-being core aspects, and this is a review of the past 5 weeks. This is the 6th. So we talked about physical well-being, and we utilized the health habit tracking sheet, where we had 6 categories here, and I emphasized how important it is to stay in the flow state, where when we recognize we're overamping or something's catching us, and we come back to that flow state, and if we're not doing enough, we rise up to do more in a way there. So we talked about physical well-being. Then mental well-being, and we look to focus on values, how values, our core values, our enabling values, our influencing values, to explore that for ourselves, because they act as a compass. Again, I've been using this in presenting to young adults, high school kids, emphasizing that, as you know your values, then when things get dark or you don't know what to do, they serve as a compass, even for ourselves at whatever age, to navigate through certain situations. Emotional well-being, we talked about heart rhythm patterns, how when our heart rhythms look like this, say we're in a state of frustration, or when they look like this, it's a state of appreciation. And then what does it take? We look to use heart-focused breathing, quick coherence technique to help us with emotional well-being. But we know there's a whole lot more, but focus on one thing at a time, and we'll have more to consider in due time. And then social. Ideally, we want to position ourselves so we're interchanging with others in an integrated way. We're playing our integrated life part. So we're playing our parts, but it's not separate from anybody else. It's integrated. Like there's a blending, there's a harmonization with each other. We find our place, which allows for our spiritual well-being. You can say from above, down, inside, out. So there's a sensing of something true to ourselves getting out into the world, our specific influence, blended with others. So those have been the core aspects of our program so far. So our mission, are you daily experiencing a state of well-being or defaulting into a disease mentality? Your mission, should you choose to accept it, again, this is from our first class, is to stop the disease mentality and embrace what it takes to experience a vitality consciousness, especially as we get older. In 6 weeks, and now we're at 6 weeks, gain a greater experience of well-being. And I know for myself, I have myself, and maybe you have too, I trust so. And then becoming, again, knowing a greater sense of well-being for ourselves and becoming a greater influence of well-being for others. So important. But then what happens when there's interferences of the world interfering with our well-being life expression? So the influences of the world, influences like shame, fear, hate, and greed. You can say many aberrant attitudes and feelings spring out of these 4 things. And they cause, you can say, a caving in. Instead of something emanating out from us, we cave into the influences of the world related to these 4 things. And basically we dry up, we cave in, we dehydrate, we shrivel up there. So the world controls us rather than us extending a well-being and influence into the world. So what does it take? The interference to the expression of life is the cause of disease and the cause of all mankind's problems. And that was coined by Dr. Bill Bain, who a number of us know and acknowledged as a great spiritual mentor. But he coined the fact, the interference to the expression of life is the cause of disease, and then the cause of all of mankind's problems. So how do we handle the things that come along, you can say, that impact us? But how do we stay in alignment? Again, so I've coined this process, the conscious clearing messenger RNA process, to use as needed to restore your sense of well-being, your well-being life expression. So again, messenger, M stands for messenger. So we are to be a messenger of light received into the heart and out into the world. And when we're aligned that way, then again, it gives a sense of well-being spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically. But when we recognize things come along that irritate us, our heart contracts. We may have that oh no feeling. Why me? Why did this happen to me? Our mind gets twisted. And then you can say in that moment, we have a choice. And in sharing together, we notice we've been catching ourselves to not default to the patterns of shame, fear, hate, and greed, okay, which are pervasive through the world. And you look at the world today, you can see how there's been a defaulting on a mass scale for the world to look like it is in respect to these things. So for us who are interested in well-being and extending well-being, we're catching ourselves and we're seeing what it takes to stay in this alignment of being a messenger of light. So it's a matter of being deliberate. So when we have that oh no feeling, our mind is twisted, we have a choice in that moment to be deliberate. Deliberate in terms of uprighting ourselves and breathing. Now that quick coherence technique we talked about, it's so important to just simply upright yourself when you feel like you're being impacted and breathe. And we breathe in and we breathe out until we can get a perspective that allows us to remember and affirm what you love, what we love. And that brings perspective that allows for forgiveness. You can say for yourself, saying, getting twisted, or someone else you feel that may have impacted us in a harmful way. And then a matter of being large, understanding where a person may be coming from, who's projecting, you'd say, hate or greed, and allowing that to be neutralized with conscious understanding. So recognizing, neutralizing, and then A stands for appreciation. Appreciate the place that you provide, appreciating the integrated part you play with all. So when this comes to this point where you've allowed something to stop within ourselves, you come back to the place of playing our part, which allows for this oh no feeling here to become oh yes, here's my opportunity. Now, one example, talking about Dr. Bill Bain, I always recognize that when things got hot or intense, there was always an attitude within him. Here is my opportunity. How about ourselves? Here's my opportunity to shift something so that my light stays on and it shines the way for all. Playing our essential part, your essential part, having a sense of destiny where the whole world depends upon me to stay in alignment. And if more of us do that, then it allows for, you can say, a massive change to occur. But individually, you can say we come into a consciousness, a greater sense of the light that we are, that you are, or you have a greater grounding inside of yourself. Here I am to provide something. And when we're in that position increasingly, we know how to act at rest and in action. So that's the messenger RNA process. So context for extending a well-being influence. And this goes along with what we just shared. The context, whereas the evil spirits of shame, fear, hate, and greed have caused divisions among men, turning men and nations in upon themselves and distorting their lives. Let me never forget that only purity can remove shame. Only love can cast out fear. Only an understanding of the truth can clear away hatred. And only the spirit of God's givingness can banish greed. That all may see that true self-interest requires the fulfillment of the whole, that the manifestation of the wholeness of God's design, all mankind may establish the condition where I myself may be truly whole. And if you think about that, what's our true self-interest, to actually be so interested in the fulfillment of the whole. So that the design of reality, you can say God's design, the design of reality, which is not manifest on earth right now, but for all mankind, may establish the conditions where I myself may be whole. So it puts it in a larger perspective, individually and collectively. And that was coined, written, spoken by this Lloyd Arthur Meeker, who later realized the light that he was with the name Yoronda, and in the Server's Code, February 14th, 1953. Just imagine if more of us moved along since that point, how the world would be. Okay, action commitment. What can I commit to doing as I leave these Essentials for Well-Being sessions? Consider, what do you want to know more about regarding well-being? So let's consider that, and let's review together now. Okay, so next step. So attend the Wellbeing Open session I planned for August 24th at 7:30. So I'm going to have a little time, take a little time in July and the summer, but to start back up again on August 24th for an open session. And this is the idea I have in the works. Conscious healthy aging. Now, Alan, we've had a platform with some of us sharing in conscious healthy aging platform, but because of this course, this is what's dawned on me, is conscious healthy aging well-being circle, where it's a grouping of folks who are interested in well-being, who are actually in the aging range, and all along to help strengthen us as elders, so we're in position to actually offer something to the younger populations. But it seems like right now the focus is to galvanize our awareness of how important it is to be right on as elders. So there's a greater influence that can extend through us. So this is the idea I have coined, and I'm kind of excited about the idea of it, a well-being circle. So it's knowing well-being for ourselves and extending a well-being influence into the world. So for sure, there's always things we can learn for our own selves, but ultimately it's to extend that influence into the world. To meet monthly, and more details to follow. So it's a continuing on from what we started with conscious healthy aging, but with a newer twist to it, a newer segue of a well-being circle.